Hey, so you brought us some really interesting material this time. It's all about this concept, the minimum viable product, or MVP.
Mhm.
And I think what we really want to do here in this deep dive is kind of cut through the noise a bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion around.
Exactly. We want to get to what a real MVP is and why it can be, such a powerful tool because honestly, it feels like the term gets thrown around, well, a lot,
Mhm.
without people really getting its potential.
Absolutely. And that's really the core message in the article you shared, right?
Yeah.
Sam Robertstad's The Myth of the MVP on
Yeah.
the Product Leader's Playbook.
Right.
He makes this great argument that the idea, which sounds, pretty simple,
Yeah, straightforward.
it often gets completely mishandled out there in the
Yeah.
real world.
Yeah,
He's really pushing us to rethink what MVP actually means.
totally. Because I think for a lot of folks, when they hear MVP, they immediately think, okay, what's the absolute fastest way to launch something?
Get it out the door.
Yeah. Just ship the bare minimum, see if it sticks, see if it gets traction. But Robertstad's piece really flips that.
It does.
His whole point is that a true MVP, it isn't primarily about speed to launch. It's actually a tool for learning.
Learning, exactly. It's
Yeah.
about gaining knowledge, not just grabbing users right away.
Okay, so let's dig into that. Where does it usually go wrong? What are the common ways people misunderstand or misuse this whole MVP idea?
Well, the article points out three sort of major pitfalls. The first one, Robertstad labels MVP as a launch shortcut.
Ah, okay.
And this is exactly that ship it fast, see what happens mentality we were just talking about.
Right.
But as he points out, it's a really good point. If you don't have a very clear, specific learning objective,
Yeah.
well, it's not really lean thinking. It's more like guessing, just faster.
Faster guessing. I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, you're not actually trying to validate any specific assumption.
No, not intentionally.
It's like fumbling with keys in the dark, hoping one works instead of, understanding the lock first.
Well put.
Okay, so that's one. What's the second misuse he talks about?
The second one is the MVP with too many features. And I think we've probably all seen this happen somewhere.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Teams start out with good intentions, right? Aiming for minimal. But then stakeholders chime in. Oh, but wouldn't it be great if it also did this? Or can we add just this one little thing?
That one little thing. Famous last words.
Precisely. And that pressure, that temptation to just add one more feature to please someone, it can be really strong.
Mm-hmm.
But the result, as the article highlights, is you end up with this bloated MVP.
Right. It's not minimum anymore.
Not at all. It's creeping towards being like version 1. And all that extra complexity, it just delays the feedback you really need.
And it confuses things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It muddies the waters. You don't know what you're actually learning from that initial release anymore.
It completely undermines the whole purpose, doesn't it? Because,
Right.
you can't tell which feature is working or maybe which one's causing problems. Okay. And the third misconception. This one feels really important.
It is. It's MVP as an excuse for low quality.
Ah, the old, don't worry, it's just the MBT line.
Exactly that. And that can be a really dangerous path. Robertstad makes the point that, look, your customers, they don't know or care about your internal development phases.
No, they just see the product.
Their first interaction with your product, that forms their impression. Full stop. So if that first experience is buggy or clunky or just unpleasant,
It's hard to come back from that.
very hard, even if you release a polished version later. So that minimum part, it should never, ever be an excuse for a poor user experience.
Absolutely. Quality still matters even at the start. Okay, so if those are the traps, the launch shortcut, the feature bloat, the low quality excuse, what does Robertstad say an MVP really is? What's the actual idea we should hold on to?
Okay, so according to the article, the definition is beautifully simple. A true MVP is the smallest thing you can build to validate a key assumption.
Okay, smallest thing, to validate a key assumption. I like that. It's focused.
Very. And he breaks it down even more. Minimum means the lightest slice of value you can test. Just enough to check that assumption.
The lightest slice. Okay.
And viable. That means it has to be something that will produce meaningful feedback. It has to actually work well enough to learn from.
Right. Okay. That completely shifts the focus, doesn't it? It's not just get it out fast. It's about this really targeted learning,
Exactly.
being super intentional about the specific thing you need to know, and then building the absolute bare minimum required to get that knowledge.
That's the essence of it.
So the speed isn't the goal itself. The goal is speeding up the learning and cutting down those big uncertainties.
Precisely. Reduce the risk by learning faster.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. And the article gives a real-world example to kind of illustrate this, right? The AI transcription tool.
It does, yeah.
Hmm.
It's a great example for editorial teams. Can you walk us through how they tackled the MVP for that?
Sure. So the article mentions that the big dream for this AI transcription tool was pretty huge. Lots of features, integrations, all the bells and whistles eventually.
A grand vision.
Yeah. But for the MVP, they deliberately stripped it way, way back. It was basically you upload an audio file. That's it.
Super simple.
And it only supported a couple of basic formats.
Oh.
And the output, just the raw, unformatted text from the AI, no fancy interface, no editing tools, nothing like that.
Okay. And the crucial part there is, what was the specific learning goal? What were they trying to find out with that super basic version?
Yeah, the core question was really fundamental. Can the AI transcripts, just as they are, even meet the basic accuracy level that the editorial teams need?
Okay. That was the make or break assumption.
Exactly. That was the riskiest piece they had to validate right at the start.
Got it. And how did they test it? Did they just throw it out there?
No, they were smart about it. They did a quiet, targeted rollout, just a small group of editors, carefully chosen. And over a few weeks, they just gathered feedback. How accurate was it? Was it usable, even in this basic form? And critically, where was the AI messing up? Where did it fall short?
And the article really drives home the value of that focused feedback, doesn't it? It wasn't just a thumbs up or thumbs down on accuracy.
Not at all. The feedback they got directly influenced their priorities. Things like, okay, what UI elements are actually needed first? How do we need to tweak the AI model itself? And maybe the most important bit, and it really shone a light on the specific places where actually you still need a human to step in.
So it defined the boundaries of the automation.
Precisely. And by resisting that urge to overbuild up front, by not adding features they guessed editors might want.
They got to the core insights much faster.
Way faster. And as the article notes, this built trust. The team could then confidently say, okay, this is where we need to invest next, because it was based on actual user input. That's a huge win.
That really is a powerful illustration. Focus on the core assumption, build the absolute minimum to test it, and you get much richer learning, a much smarter development path.
Totally.
So, based on this example and the other points, what does the article suggest is a better, more effective way to actually build MVPs?
Well, Robertstad lays out a few key steps. First, and this feels like the absolute cornerstone, identify the riskiest assumption.
Okay.
What's the one belief you hold that, if it turns out to be wrong, could just completely sink the whole product? You got to tackle that one first with your MVP.
Makes total sense. Address the biggest unknown up front. What's next?
Second, define a really clear learning goal, like crystal clear. What exactly do you need to learn from this MVP? And crucially, how are you going to measure if you've learned it?
Right. Make it specific and measurable.
Keeps everything focused. Then third, and I thought this was a really interesting point, he says, don't automatically assume you even need to launch a product, even a basic one.
Ooh. Like what else?
He suggests things like prototypes or concierge flows, where you manually do the thing the user thinks is automated.
The Wizard of Oz technique.
Exactly. Or even just doing really deep user interviews. These can actually be MVPs themselves for testing certain assumptions.
That's a brilliant reminder. Viable doesn't always mean code. Sometimes the fastest way to learn is lower tech.
Definitely. Fourth piece of advice, design for insight, not for scale.
Okay, explain that.
At this super early stage, you're not trying to handle millions of users or optimize conversion funnels. You're optimizing for getting clear direction, for understanding. Scale comes later if the core idea proves out.
Got it. Direction over metrics at this point.
And finally, number 5, and this is subtle but important. Make it lovable where it counts.
Lovable. Even the MVP.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's basic, it should still show respect for the user's time. It shouldn't feel completely broken or frustrating. It needs to be usable enough to get that meaningful feedback we talked about.
Right. Minimum doesn't mean sloppy. It still needs to function for its intended learning purpose.
Exactly. Respect the user.
Those are really solid guidelines. And the article also tackles how to handle those inevitable pushes from stakeholders, right? The just one more feature crowd or the let's polish it more crowd.
Yeah, it gives some really useful reframes for those conversations.
Okay, like what?
So when someone says, hey, can we just add this one little thing? The suggested response is something like, let's focus on testing our core assumption first. We can definitely keep that idea for the next iteration.
Nice. Acknowledges it, but defers it. keeps the focus.
Right. It parks the idea without derailing the current goal.
Okay, and what about the let's polish it more before we push?
The suggested reframe there is, right now, insight is our priority, not extensive polish.
Direct, clear.
Yeah, again, it just clearly states the purpose of this specific phase. These reframes, they're all about keeping the team and the stakeholders aligned on what an MVP is really for and stopping it from getting watered down.
That alignment is crucial. And to help with that, the article even provides a checklist, right? An MVP assessment checklist.
It does, yeah. Super practical. It's like a quick sanity check before you decide your MVP is ready.
Okay, run us through those questions.
Sure. First, is this MVP addressing a well-defined user problem? Back to basics. Having a clear why. Second, what specific metrics or KPIs will tell us if this MVP succeeded in its learning goal? Need to know how you'll measure success.
Measurement.
Third, are we really truly testing the absolute minimum feature set needed for validation? That's the constant guard against scope creep.
Keep it lean.
Fourth, do we have a clear plan to actually collect and act on the feedback? Because the feedback is useless if you don't do anything with it. Closes the loop.
The learning loop, yeah.
And finally, fifth, does this MVP, even being minimal, still offer a respectful and usable experience? Back to that quality point, minimum isn't an excuse for bad.
That checklist is gold. It really forces you to be honest about whether you're building a true MVP or just something else.
Yeah, a mini version 1, maybe.
Right. So as we kind of wrap up the core ideas from the article, what are the big final takeaways Robertstad wants us to remember?
I think he really hammers home that minimum should never mean careless, right? And viable doesn't automatically translate to valuable in the market sense. Not yet, anyway.
Okay.
He sums up a real MVP as being purposeful, targeted, and humble.
Purposeful, targeted, humble. I like that.
Yeah, it's not some magic shortcut to a perfect launch. It's really a strategic bet, an investment you make to reduce your uncertainty and to focus your limited resources on what actually matters to users. Because, as he puts it so well, great products don't just appear fully formed. They start with an insight and then the courage to actually test that insight rigorously.
That's such a crucial shift in thinking, isn't it? Moving from MVP as just a smaller product to MVP as a focused experiment designed for learning.
Exactly right. It's all about the learning. So, for everyone listening, now that we've kind of gone through this reframed view of the MVP, we want to leave you with a couple questions that Sam Robertstad actually poses in his article in the Your Turn section. He asks, what's the worst misuse of MVP you've personally seen? And also, how do you, or how does your team, currently define MVP?
Those are great questions for reflection.
Yeah.
Really makes you think about your own context.
Definitely. Worth pondering.
And maybe building on that. Building on this whole idea of testing assumptions. Here's a final thought to consider. How might really leaning into the learning part of an MVP, focusing on that over just the minimum part, how might that actually change your whole approach to building anything new? Maybe even things outside of traditional product development.
Ooh, interesting. Applying the MVP learning mindset more broadly.
Yeah, something to mull over.